go see the Mardi Gras. If you go to New Orleans, you ought to go see the Mardi Gras.
Happy Mardi Gras! So tonight's episode of Tales from the Parade Route is a very special episode to Kirk and I. To say that tonight's guest did not have a major impact on our love of Mardi Gras would be the equivalent of saying that red beans and rice aren't a delicious dish, you know? It would be a complete farce. When we were both in elementary school, our elementary school did a very special Mardi Gras ball. Very similar to some of the traditional balls. Alice Birney did a ball for over 20 years.
24.
So 24 years. So it brings me great honor to introduce Ms. Kay Caruso. How are you today?
I'm great today. It's great to see you and Kirk again. And I'm just glad to be here and to talk about what happened at Alice Birney School.
Yeah. So for 24 years the ball went?
Yeah. The first ball was in 1975. And it was something that just the fifth grade teachers did in their classroom. We had, our buildings had those big multi-purpose areas. And so we had 6 or 7 fifth grades at the time, and we got together and decided no one was celebrating Mardi Gras, and that it was such a cultural significance to our area that we needed to celebrate Mardi Gras. So we did it one year just with our fifth grade students in the multi-purpose area. We invited parents, and it turned out great. Then the next year, we got a new principal whose name was Miss Mildred Hurd, fantastic person, a great principal. And she said every class must, or every grade level, must do a performance on the stage. We had a big stage in the cafeteria. She said every grade level must do a performance on the stage for some holiday. Pick a holiday. So the fifth grade teachers, we looked at each other and we said, Mardi Gras. And so she said, we explained that we had it in the multi-purpose area, and she says, that won't do. I want something with real costumes and, a really nice program. So we put our heads together, and we had 2 great parents to work with us, Russell Papania and Betty Martini. And we got together with the parents, and we came up with our ideas for what the theme and the costumes of the ball were going to be. And we talked to the parents, and all of the parents were always very receptive to the idea that we wanted to do this. And we always had a lot of support. Otherwise, it would have, not been nearly the spectacular ball that it ended up being. And so we had a lot of parental support. We chose our kids by picking names in each classroom. Each classroom had a maid and a duke. And then they wore nice costumes. And then each of the 6 or 7 fifth grade classes then performed on the stage. So it was also a venue for the kids to get up and perform, which is something that I always promoted, to have kids on stage performing, because I think it develops a lot of character and poise and confidence in kids when they have to get up and perform in front of a crowd of people. And so the first one just worked out great. Everybody loved it, and it just took off from there.
As I recall, when I was going to school, which would have been early 80s, the balls were very, very elaborate at that time. I can't imagine they started off that way. How would that have started as far as the scale of it? Were you still doing a parade at that time, or was it only a ball?
We were doing a parade.
Mm.
We started parades in 1976
Okay.
under Ms. Hurd, and every grade level had to. The costumes were not anything big for the grades because all the kids had to participate, but they would have like a little headband with a feather for Indians, and whatever the teachers and the parents in classrooms decided on, they would the whole grade level had to have the same theme, though. But it was some very simple costume. The kids brought beads just in bags and on their arms and walked down the street and threw the beads. And it was a lot of fun for them to do that. So everybody in the school got to participate in Mardi Gras in some capacity.
Yeah, so I found that photo of me. I don't recall the grade. It had to be second or third, where I was a unicorn that year. And I remember our whole class was a unicorn. Later, I was playing in the band, so I always marched in the band. We'd done 2 or 3 schools. It was Mr. Green was his name.
Oh, Mr. Green, he was great. He was a great band director.
Mm-hmm. He was the director of several schools, I recall, 7 or 8.
Right.
So I think we did maybe 3 parades together each year, if I recall that correctly, which may not be correct. I'm not real sure, but
well, we had it as part of our 5th grade curriculum. Actually, it was a way to incorporate social studies and make it more meaningful by having themes that went along with our social studies program. Like we had things about the history of transportation. We had discovery, where they learned about the explorers, the different explorers and different parts of the world that were explored. And we also had a theme about Louisiana history, and that was all in 5th grade. And we did that until I got to check my cheat sheet here. Until 1986. Over the years, the number of 5th grade classes decreased until we got down to 3 5th grade classes. So we really didn't have enough kids to put on a big ball. So in 1986, we decided that we would go to some of the lower grades and use kids from the lower grades as in our dance groups for the ball. And so in 1986, we added 3rd and 4th grade, and we had a 6th grade also at that time. Yeah. So the ball still focused, the main characters of the ball were always the 5th graders. So, but what happened was some of the kids participated in 5th grade in the main parts and as royal dancers and things like that. But then when they got to 6th grade, they wanted to come back and dance again. So they were able to come back and dance in one of the dance groups. And basically our ball was constructed following the traditional lines of a Mardi Gras ball. I was in balls as a kid, and I attended a lot of balls, and family members that were in the balls. All my nieces were in balls. My brother-in-law was king of a ball, and so it's always been something that's kind of in my blood. I grew up with it. And so I just knew the traditional procedure that balls followed. And so our little Birney ball then followed that procedure. And so we had a captain, we had maids and dukes, and then to incorporate more kids into the group, it was sort of like a dance review. We had a dance group from each classroom or from each grade level. And that was kind of like they got up and did a dance and wore a costume, and it was a way to include more kids in the ball and have them experience the ball. And one of the other things that we did kind of at the beginning, we did our own version of If Ever I Cease to Love.
Yeah.
And we had our own
words,
specially written words for Alice Birney's school that went to If Ever I Cease to Love. And that was our finale every year. And one of the other things I always incorporated in our Grand March, Aida, because most of the balls used Aida in their music for their Grand March or for one of their kings or queens to come out to. And that was a way to introduce the kids to, an opera. And we talked about that too, is that I just didn't play the music. We talked about where did If Ever I Cease to Love come from? Where did Aida come from? So that they would have an idea of the connection between the music and Mardi Gras.
Well, also with each of the maids and dukes and lieutenants, besides doing just a introduction of, hey, this is Kirk and Jane Smith, who are coming up, there was a description of the importance of the theme of that maiden Duke.
Well, we always had a script, and it was always written with learning in mind, that the kids are going to learn something from this and not just be, sequins and glitter and music, that they were going to learn some facts from this as well.
Right.
So all of our scripts involved facts about whatever the characters were that the kids were portraying. So, and our captain was the moderator for the ball, the narrator of the theme of the ball, and the captain introduced the different maids and dukes or lieutenants. And eventually we had so many kids who wanted to be maids or dukes in the ball, and we could only have so many people do that. So we incorporated those extra kids as lieutenants, and they also got to read part of the script. So, and hopefully the kids that were reading it were learning about what they were reading, as well as the kids who were going to be listening to it. But we performed the ball for the parents on a Thursday night. And then the next morning we performed it for the students of the school. And then that afternoon, well, actually it wasn't that afternoon, it was around probably 11 when we started the parade. And then everybody in the school got to participate in the parade.
Parade was obviously my first run of being in the parade. I'd later ridden in Crewe of Little Rascals, I think, the year after I had left Alice Birney. But we had throws, we had personalized cups, and, well, not personalized, like branded cups with Alice Birney, and the wooden nickels, of course, and
We did.
beads and everything else. It was, for the small, tucked away little school in Metairie, we really got to firsthand see what went into Mardi Gras. I know it had a tremendous influence on the both of us.
Yeah.
Well,
So
we
it
had,
was a good way of
we
getting
were a
into
little
it.
school, but we had people with big ideas.
Yeah.
Yes.
And, I pretty much was in charge of organizing it all.
I
But
remember you
had
dealing with it all
wonderful
year.
people. We
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
We did. We started in the summertime,
Mhm.
and I would meet with my parents and my people who were helping with costumes and things in the summertime. But I didn't do this all by myself.
Mm.
If I hadn't had these wonderful parents who came and helped, and parents who, even after their kids left Alice Birney, would come back and help and work on the ball and help the parents of the maids and dukes make costumes and headpieces. And so if it wasn't for those people and the support we had and the fact that they had big ideas for what they wanted for the ball and for the kids to experience, I guess it would have gone by the wayside long ago. But we just had this constant influx of people who wanted the ball to grow and wanted it to be big, and who had ideas, and we just thought nothing was impossible. We'll just, if somebody wants to do it, we'll do it.
Yeah.
And so actually our 20th anniversary was the first year we had cups.
Ah,
And I got to design the cup. I didn't know how to design a cup, and I went and found out if we could get cups. And then actually it was Jimmy Clark Productions that made our cups for us. He gave us a great price, and he showed me how to design a cup. And so we did that. We wanted to do something special for the 20th anniversary, which was 1995 was the 20th anniversary. And so we had cups. But we always had our wooden nickels, our wooden doubloons, and that was started by our accounts clerk, Sandy Gladden. Sandy was our accounts clerk. Her kids attended Birney, and then she was our accounts clerk for a long time. And so we had our Birney doubloons, and I think we might have even started before 1981. I have one from 1981. And I had them all the way through to the last year, 1999. But we could have started actually before 1981, because this was something Sandy just did on her own.
yeah.
And I think she started doing this maybe right after we started having Mardi Gras balls and parades.
Well, I want to say that the Birney wooden nickels was my first remembrance of where wooden nickels came into play for me with Mardi Gras. Even though I was going to Little Rascals, just as a little kid, I may have not, realized, oh, that's a wooden nickel that they're throwing to you.
Right.
I remember for a lot of the year, though, I remember my teacher anyway, if we did something good or something, your reward was a wooden nickel. So you got to build them up over the year. Or I think they were like maybe 3 for a quarter or something like that. You could buy a couple of them.
They were very cheap.
Yeah. And then when I was bragging, we had the crew of T-Rex here who makes the little shoebox floats. So one year I had the winning shoebox float. My teacher gave me like 10 wooden nickels was my prize.
Oh, good for
won
you.
the major award that year. But look, you talk about how much parents were involved in, contributing to the ball and the parade. Well, my father here waiting in the wings, if you don't mind, let me introduce him right quick. He's a great friend, a good buddy, and another great inspiration for me for Mardi Gras. And he was one of the ones that would help contribute to the parades quite a bit. I showed you some photos earlier of the box cars that I think it was my sister's class wore. But we had half the neighborhood in the front yard painting these things. It was a fun event. So.
Well, I retired in '99. And that was the last year we had a parade. Mm-hmm. And in 2000, we didn't make an announcement that we weren't having the parade anymore. Or wasn't we, but the school wasn't having the parade anymore. They didn't make an announcement. And so on the day that we would usually have the parade, the school secretary got some phone calls. And they said, "Where is the parade?"
We're out here.
Yes, she said, "I have people sitting here waiting for the parade. Where is the parade?" And we said, well, we didn't. I keep using the word we, but I always think of Alice Birney as still being part of Alice Birney, so I just say we. But so the school secretary said, "Oh, we didn't. We're not doing it anymore. We're not going to have the parade anymore." And the lady was very irate. She says, "Well, you should have said something. You should have said something out. I have all these people waiting for the parade on my front yard." And over time, I met people, and they would say, "What happened to the parade? We were waiting for the parade." Because, I think St. Anne Preschool, and they had a couple of other little preschools in the area, they would come out for our parade every year, too.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of people who had older parents and relatives who would come, and some of them, were in wheelchairs or couldn't get around, and that was Mardi Gras for them.
Yeah.
So we did, happily, we really served the community in that way, that we provided some entertainment for some of the people who lived around Alice Birney School.
Well, they now have the marching group. Was that started after the parade stopped, or was that part of the parade at one point?
The Birney.
They have a dance group, whatever you want to call it.
That was started, actually that was the Birney cheerleaders.
Okay.
And that was, Star Campari was one of our first grade teachers, and she was in charge of the cheerleaders. And we had a former student, Joycelyn DeVincent. And when Joycelyn left and was in middle school and high school, she would come back to Birney every afternoon and work with those cheerleaders and got them to do wonderful performances. And so Star thought she wanted to get the kids into a parade. So she actually contacted Little Rascals first.
Yeah, it was even Little Rascals and generally Driftwood. That might be.
And Driftwood, and then there was another parade group that used to parade down the highway. I can't think of the name of it now, but and they're no longer parading, but they had a small parade. And I happened to go. My niece was in this crew one year, and I happened to go out to watch the parade, and there were the Birney kids in the parade.
Yeah.
So it was always great to see them. It was a way to kind of continue Birney's participation in Mardi Gras.
Well, I think the first time we had seen him in Driftwood, we had asked about if Birney still threw the parade, and the lady kind of looked at me like, were in the parade. But I don't think she realized that, they used to have a, pretty good parade around the school itself.
No, she knew. The Star was at our school.
No, it was like a
someone
chaperone.
else. Oh, somebody else. Yeah. Yeah. Star was one of my great helpers because was in the first grade class, and she and Peggy Roberts always did a dance group with the first graders, and it was amazing the precision that they had the first graders do. And that was another thing about the ball too, because I'm not going to put a kid on the stage if they don't know what they're doing, because we practice, Sean. You can remember.
Yeah, oh yeah.
We practiced and practiced and practiced till everybody looked really good. And people were so surprised when they would see the kids perform, because they had a lot of people who came to it for the first time actually had no idea that it was going to be a spectacular ball with beautiful costumes and great headpieces. But to see the kids perform and do their dances with such precision, and then to have first graders and even kindergartners one year doing these little dances, and I mean, nobody missed a beat. Everybody was on target, It was
we're still great
to see
dancers.
them do that.
Just so you know.
Yeah, I remember the two dance groups that I was in for the ball. One of them was Pinocchio,
Yeah.
and we danced to I Got No Strings on Me Now. And the other one, we were California Surfers, to where we were wearing like Hawaiian shirts and
Right.
jams. And we danced to, I want to say it was Catch a Wave.
Yeah,
or
it was
Surfing USA.
Yeah, it was Surfing USA. Yeah.
And then my third year in the ball, I was
You were-
lucky enough to be a Duke.
You were a Duke.
And I was the year that I was a Duke, we were celebrating the holidays, and I was Thanksgiving.
Yes.
And my sister also was in the ball, and I remember her year was also
Our year was
celebrate the holidays,
too,
and she was St. Patrick's
right,
Day.
She was St. Patrick's Day.
But I remember as a kid, we talked briefly about the costume, and I remember when Cherie was a maid, going over to my aunt's house and Ms. Scarangos' house, just about every night for, just like
For
you hear
weeks.
about,
For
just like
weeks.
you hear about the Mardi Gras Indians working on their costume darn near the entire year. Most of the school year, once it was like, yes, I'm going to be a maid, I'm going to be a Duke.
Right.
You started working on your costume.
Well, we started repeating themes. We had 3 themes, even when we were in 5th grade. We had 3 themes, and we would repeat them because it was such an arduous task, because you had to get the costumes, you had to get the music, you had to think of the dances, you had to write a script, I had to draw pictures of costumes and color them in for the parents, and we had tons of meetings with the parents. So the easiest thing for us to do was to reuse these same things, because it made it so much easier to do. And the kids didn't mind at all. They would look forward to, next year I'm going to be in this ball, and next year I'm going to be in that ball. And when we started adding the 3rd graders and the 2nd graders and 1st graders, kindergartners, they knew the sequence of the 3 balls. And they would count, in 2nd grade, I'm going to be in this ball, and I'm going to be a Hooray for the USA.
Yeah.
In 3rd grade, I'm going to be in Disney. And in 4th grade, I'm going to be in Let's Celebrate. So, they actually look forward to the year that they would be in that ball. So it actually turned out to be a kind of neat idea to do it that way.
Yeah,
It was a time saver for us.
Yeah, it worked perfectly for, the only reason why I got to see 2 of them, to where I guess I had an active role in the ball, was because my sister was 3 years ahead of me.
Right.
So it just happened to fall to where her year was the holidays, and then we went through the rotation, and then my year was the holidays again.
Right. So we did a tribute to Disney, and that was all the different Disney movies, basically, but all the fairy tales. And that was a good way to introduce kids also to literature and to the imagination of Walt Disney, because that was part of the introduction to the ball, was talking about his imagination and how he came up with all these ideas. And then we did Hooray for the USA, which was a great learning tool because that was about all the different sections of the United States.
Yes.
And then we did Celebrations, which was, we called it Let's Celebrate. And I still hear Kool and the Gang in my head.
Yeah.
And every time I hear the song Celebration, I automatically go into the dance mode because we did it so many times. And one thing, too, we had a special group of dances called the Royal Dances.
Yes.
And Pat Eady and Pat Favalora took over that group because my hands were full.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it takes a team to make a...
Yeah, they had both gone to dancing school as kids also, so they knew what they were doing. And so I let them go with the Royal Dances, and we had some fantastic dances that they did. And then Pat Eady's daughter, Jennifer, was actually won awards for her dancing. And she came and started working with the kids, and we had just incredible things that these girls would do. And actually, we did have boys in the Royal Dance group, too. We had a couple of boys along the way who wanted to do it. And one of my favorite groups of all, one year I had 4 boys who wanted to be in the ball. They wanted to be in a dance group. And I said, you know, do you want to do this really, guys? You know, think about it. You know, it's just going to be the 4 of you on the stage. It's not going to be a big group. You're going to be up there by yourself. We want to do it. We want to do it. Please let us do it. So we did New York, New York, and I got them some top hats and some canes. When they finished the dance, they got a standing ovation. That's how good they were. And because they wanted to do it so badly, they did just a spectacular performance the night of the ball. And the parents really appreciated the fact that it was these 4 boys up there dancing by themselves, and they actually, after the dance, they gave them a standing ovation. That was one of my favorite things of all the dance groups that we did, was those 4 guys. And I think one of them was Eric Jorson. I don't know if you remember.
I remember the name. Yeah.
And so it was fun things like that. That's what made it fun to do when you had things like that happened. You know, but you know what? I want to show you some artifacts.
Well, before we get to those, what you have there are the scepters, the royal scepters.
Yes.
How did we choose our king and queen?
Oh, yes. I forgot about that because that was an important Mardi Gras tradition, and that was a learning experience for the kids too, because the 12th night revelers did their cake and they pulled the little charms out of the cake, and whoever got the golden bean charm was the queen for the 12th night revelers. So I was fascinated by that. So the only way that I could find that was a fair way to handle the king and queen, because I didn't want to make it a competition and where, you know, people had to sell so many tickets or something like that. I didn't want to do that. So the only fair way that I could think of was to do the golden bean. So each kid would get an envelope with a card on it with a red bean glued on it.
Mm-hmm.
And one bean had glitter dust, gold glitter dust on it. And so whoever got we would have a time in the program where we would announce that we're going to crown the king and queen. And the royal dancers would bring out the envelopes. They were in a little container, and we would do the kings first, the dukes first, so they could pick whatever envelope they wanted. It was all way above board.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would pick the envelope, they opened it up, they pulled their card out. If they had the golden bean, they walked to the middle of the stage, and they got crowned with their scepter, this is king's scepter, this is the king's crown. And then, of course, we had the cape that they also, and the principal would always be the person to do the crowning, except for one year when Polly Thomas did it because Mr. Squirrelage wasn't in town. So we did the crowning of the king first, Then we passed out the envelopes to the
girls.
maids, to the girls, and they picked, and whoever got the golden bean went to the middle of the stage, and she got her scepter, which had a real orchid on it, by the way. Compliments of Russell Papania's florist. And then she got crowned with the Queen's crown. And so that's how we picked our king and our queen. And this was the first scepter made by Russell Papania that was used in 1976. I only have one scepter left, but the first scepter that we had from the first ball that was in the cafeteria in 1976.
Wow.
So this is my little treasure. That I keep.
You had mentioned Mr. Russell.
Yeah.
Mr. Russell and a lot of the parents, before we were recording, we were looking through some of the pictures of the ball, and you saw the progression of not only the costumes, but the staging.
The scenery.
You know, the scenery on the staging. It got super elaborate, as time went on, to where, we're saying, it was like going to, almost the Rex Ball, you know what I mean?
I had two of my main guys. Now, I had some other helpers, too, including my own husband, who would come and help do this, and my son as well. But Louis Sayuke was a master carpenter, and when Louis's daughter got old enough to be in the ball, he started getting involved in the decorations, and he was willing to do whatever we wanted to do, and we got to the point where we just transformed the whole cafeteria into a scene. And one of my favorite ones was we did the castle every year for the Walt Disney Ball, the tribute to Disney Ball. We did the castle every year. And we got to liking the decorations so much that we let them stay up all year. We took, the portable stages that we had to add to the front of the stage to make a big enough stage for the kids to walk on. So we would take those stages down, but we would leave the decorations up that were on the brick wall and on the back of the stage. And then kindergarten would use that for their kindergarten graduation, and would have it for awards day at the end of the year, and then at the end of the year we'd take it down. So it got to be quite elaborate, because Louis was very talented, and Bill Cook was amazing. He did a lot with our lighting. Oh, something I forgot to mention too. And this was because I attended so many Carrollton balls. When the captain of Carrollton would come out, but I know they do this in other balls too now, but he would wave his wand and the big Carrollton C would light up. And so we did that at Birney too. We had a big B that we put at the front of the stage, and this was Bill Cook, really. This came from Bill Cook. It was lighted with Christmas lights, and he had it all hooked up. And we would have one kid in the back of the stage watching, and our captain would come out, and he or she would walk around the stage, and when she got to the middle of the stage, she'd face the B, or he'd face the B, wave his wand, and the kid in the back would stick the plug in the socket, and the B would light up.
I think that was actually my job. I did that. And I recall being so nervous that I was like,
your job? Yes.
I'm
Yes.
almost positive I did that one.
And it was a big production backstage, because there was, like some of the royal dancers would be watching, and because the person who was lighting it was across the stage, on the opposite side of the stage from where everybody was coming on. So it was like, and once you got there, you had to stay there for the whole ball, because you couldn't walk back across the stage. And so it was just had to be done with precision. But we got it right every time. And the B never failed us. It lived every single year. And we actually only had one glitch in all the balls that we had, because we used tapes. All the music was on tape. And we would have a counter, and everything would be numbered as to where the next song started. So one year, the Royal Dancers, actually, I had only one tape of the Royal Dancers' music, which was unusual because I backed up everything. And for some reason, the tape folded over. And so when we would play the tape, only the first part of it, and I think it was Celebration was the song too, only the first part of it would play, and then it would stop. So we tried 2 or 3 times to get it to work, and we couldn't get it to work. So I just I hollered to the girls, just keep dancing. And my principal, Milton Scorlich was principal, he flew up to the stage, came up the back way of the stage, and he says, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I told him what was wrong. He took the tape out. He pulled the thing out with a pencil. He saw it was folded over. He fixed it. We put it in. I hollered to the dancers, stop and start over. and that's what we did. And that was the only glitch we had in 24 years of doing the ball. So, which was incredible because there was always so much going on, behind stage. And, every year I would think to myself, why am I doing this? It just gets to be a hassle sometimes, And then I would think, I'm not going to do it next year. And then the kids would come up on the stage, ready to go on the stage. And I look at their little faces and I go, I guess I'm doing it again next year. Just to see how happy they were to perform.
Yeah, well, the impact that it put on to us, without the Mardi Gras Ball, we wouldn't have known about, it would have been years later till we realized, how a proper Mardi Gras Ball happens.
Right.
Traditions with the bean.
Yeah, the tradition with the bean. The pageantry and the beauty of a Mardi Gras Ball.
Well, there was really pageantry, and at one point I tried to tone the costumes down, and the parents were like, no, you can't do that. We want all the sequins and the designs. We want to do all this work. And they did, and the costumes came out beautiful. They were always some design on the front, and then for the boys with the capes on the back, always, fully designed, sometimes almost 3-dimensional designs on the back of these things. The parents really went all out. And we had a little problem at the beginning, the first couple of years we did it, because we didn't quite know what to do with the headpieces, or how to get the headpieces to fit. And Sandy Gladden came up with this wonderful idea of a circle. And we started with 2 pieces of corrugated cardboard. It was a circle, and then you'd cut the head out of it so that it would fit, the circle would fit down onto the head. And then we used, you would buy these buckram caps that all the big balls used to at the time for headpieces. And you would buy these buckram caps, and then we would duct tape all this piece with the circular piece, and duct tape the hat. We put enough duct tape on it so that it would fit the kid's head tightly, so it would be, customized, a customized fit. So Sandy came up with that design, and we started having workshops at school. Or we would have one night when all the maids and dukes' parents would come, and I would have people like Sandy, Linscarengos, Elaine Reese, who would come, and the old time helpers, and show the parents how to put these headpieces together. And then we came across one year a way of doing it that made it much, much easier than a cardboard, was styrofoam.
Yeah.
And I would order these huge styrofoam pieces every year, and we would be able to cut, and you only needed one piece cut. And then you could shave it down and get a much better fit than you could with the cardboard. But it looked like it snowed in the cafeteria because we were sanding and grinding these headpieces down. And once we did that, it was really easy to make a headpiece because you could just stick, pins and things onto the headpiece to hold it, to hold whatever designs you were putting on it. And, the designs really took off. And I would try every year to say, we want a nice big headpiece, but we don't want it to be so gigantic that it's going to fall off the head or be unbalanced. But I always had somebody who would have to go, wild and make a gigantic headpiece. And we had a couple of years, we had the feathers, where they wanted to put the feathers on the headpieces and things like that. So was hard to control the parents once they got into doing it, but that was fine. That's what it was about. And if they wanted their kid to look good, it was fine with me.
Yeah, it was. My costume was a piece of art.
Yeah, true. Truly, Sean, all the costumes were a piece of art.
Yeah. Just remembering, the costumes. Like mine had a big because I was Thanksgiving. I had the Mayflower, and I remember when my dad was building the ship. And I was like, "Can I help?" And he's like,
"No.
There's one that you can't mess up, buddy. Go play video games." And the detail that went into the costume making was incredible.
And since we brought the costume making up, I had a packet.
Yeah.
I had a packet of what to do for a costume for maids and dukes, what to do and what not to do. So the parents got that, so they had a guide on how to put costumes together and how to sequin costumes and things like that. And then also I had a guide for the crew members, because one year I had a teacher whose brother had a T-shirt shop in Lakeside Shopping Center. Clearview Shopping Center. And she said, "Have you ever thought of using T-shirts for the crew, the dancing groups of the crew, And I went like, "No, but, rather than to have to make a costume." So I went over and talked to the guy. He gave me a great discount, and we started using T-shirts. So all the kids then in the dance groups matched perfectly, because they all had the same color T-shirt, all the same style T-shirt. And then all we needed to do was get pants. And I was fortunate enough to go to Jefferson Variety and have this wonderful woman, Lisa, help me. Lisa helped me for years. And I also sent the maids and dukes parents over to her, and she helped them pick out the right kinds of fabric for that would go with their costumes, But Lisa would cut the fabric or fringe or sequins or whatever we needed. She would cut it all out and package it for me. And I would just go to Jefferson Variety and pick it up, and it was all put in the package for me. And so we would have like the loose sequins and all. And so, maybe they needed 20 green sequins for something. And I would have the kids come in at recess time, the 5th graders would come in at recess time, and they would count out sequins. And I had kids who knew the difference between a sequin and a spangle, and slung sequins, and 10-millimeter sequins, and 7-millimeter sequins. And the kids were talking about all the different kinds of sequins and all the different kinds of decorations that we used on costumes. So they got a little bit costume design in that as well. But they got a packet, and it would tell them the crews, the dancing groups, and it would tell them what was in the package, what were the materials that they needed, and like the parents would it would say what the parents had to supply, like if you had hooks or buttons or something like that, they had to supply that. And then they get a package, it would have the hat in it, the T-shirt, fabric to make the pants, whatever sequins they needed, and they would have instructions on how to make the costume. So we were really lucky. Every year I'd have one parent who would volunteer to make the first costume. We'd have a meeting with all the crew parents one afternoon. They'd come and pick up the material, they'd see the costume, and they'd get their costume packet. And it was amazing because, considering how many kids we had, in 30 kids sometimes in a dance group, the costumes matched pretty well. So they followed instructions.
I remember also when I was a duke, one of the special things about being a maid or a duke was for the parade, you got to ride in a car.
Right.
So I was in the back. I remember my dad went and rented like a LeBaron convertible to where I was sitting on the trunk essentially with my maid.
Right.
For the parade. And it made you feel like a king,
We started that really at the beginning of the parade when we first had maids and dukes. The first year, 76, we started that. And we said, you can ride in a truck, you can ride in a convertible, and we would put a notice out every year in the school, in the parent newsletter that went out saying, you know, if you have anybody who has a truck, or let us know, and they want to, you know, drive a kid. We never thought about insurance or anything like that, which today, you know, you have to sign all these papers, but we just had people bring cars, and a couple of years in a row, we had a car club that brought cars. And they had all kinds of big convertibles, and they even had some like old-time cars that they brought. And so it was great. It was great that we had so many people who wanted to cooperate. And we were lucky, too, because, you know, we had to have Sheriff Harry Lee. My gosh. Harry Lee was such a great help to our school. He was always there to help us with whatever we needed. And he would supply the policeman who would be our escort for the parade. And he would come as well, and he'd throw his little badges that said Harry Lee, Sheriff. And so he was always a great supporter of our parade. And we had quite a number of local people, politicians, who would come and be our parade marshals. We even had Arthur Hardy, the great Arthur Hardy, Mr. Mardi Gras himself, who was our parade marshal one year, and he did a page in his Mardi Gras guide, and he even did a feature on Channel 4. He was working for Channel 4 at the time, and he even did a feature on our ball for Channel 4.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, kudos to Arthur. He was always a great supporter, too. But Polly Thomas was always there, and she always attended our balls. We had Ken Hollis, who was a local, I think, state representative.
Yeah. I still talk to his son, Paul.
Do you?
Yeah.
And
his son is actually a representative these days.
Oh.
In Mandeville, actually.
I'm trying to find my cheat sheet. Okay. We had, also we had one year, a fictional character. We had Marty G. Raccoon, who came and he didn't ride in a car. He just walked through the parade. But, he was quite a popular little character for a few years, and I think it was in the 90s. Maybe he was at one of our last parades. And that was Greg Ostrich. He had done that wonderful little New Orleans song album. And I forgot where I met Greg, but anyway, I got talking to him, and you know, I said, why don't you bring your Marty G. Raccoon costume and come do our parade? And he did. And I still have my little doll from my Mardi Gras Raccoon doll. So, which maybe will be worth something one day.
So, was the end of the parade and ball, did that just leave when you retired?
Yeah,
or
when I retired, they retired everything.
Really couldn't keep it going?
Yeah. I was hoping they would still, I can understand why they didn't have the ball.
I mean, it was a major ordeal.
I was wishing that they would still have the parade. I just kept hoping that they would not do it, but they stopped the parade as well. And you know, the kids missed it that first year, especially. But after a while, they didn't even know we had it anymore. But that first couple of years, they missed doing it, and the parents missed it too, and the neighborhood missed it. You know, so you know, I know the ball would. They wanted me to come back and do the ball, but I was not in a position to do the ball as a volunteer.
Yeah.
I didn't, you wouldn't have any clout as a volunteer, and I needed to be able to correct children when they were misbehaving.
Right.
And I needed to be able to, you know, tell people what to do. And I didn't feel that as a volunteer I would have the authority to do that. And rather than to get into a bad situation with somebody, it was best just to let it go.
Yeah.
And
that's a shame, though, because I know it had built a lot of. I remember seeing a video that Ann had posted. It was, I want to say, like the 1983 ball. It's on Facebook or YouTube. I don't know if you ever seen it, but
yeah, I was telling her right
actually
before the
there's
show.
a video
I
on
did not see
that.
it, but you know, I have all the videos from all of the balls. And the last couple of years, we had a guy who was associated with the video department at Loyola, and his son, I believe, was a student at Birney and was in the balls, and he videotaped it for us. He put it on disc.
Okay.
And so the last couple of years, maybe 5 or 6 years of the ball, I have on a disc, and I can get those to Sean at another time if y'all want to post it somewhere.
I'd like to see how
Something
far
with
it grew. It'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, and I do have some that are still VHS tapes, if anybody still has a VHS player.
Yeah, I can transfer it from
Do you
VHS
really?
to a computer. I'll get you.
Great. And I also have reel-to-reel videotape. I don't know if anybody can transfer that, but you're welcome to that if you can do it.
I can talk to some people and see. I'd love to, to have that footage out there. It's a great
I'd love to have it
historical
posted
value
all on YouTube just so the people who were in it could see it. And I have tons of pictures. So maybe I can get Sean to set up a website for Birney.
we definitely can.
Hey, I might get them going again.
Yeah, and those people who are now grown-ups and who were in the ball and maybe would like their pictures, maybe they didn't buy them when, we took individual pictures of a lot of the crew people and of course all the maids and dukes, and maybe for some reason they didn't buy the pictures when we had them, or maybe they lost pictures in hurricane or whatever. But I would love to get those pictures in the hands of the people who really need them, because I'm afraid they'll just be done away with later.
Well, also, as time goes on, when we were looking through some of the pictures, you could see where just time has faded some of the pictures a little bit just because of the nature of that paper and, the technologies of printing pictures back then. It would definitely be of historical value to get that stuff transferred to a digital format.
Yeah, well, we did the ball for 24 years. I've been retired for 20 years. So that's a long time to have some of this information, pictures and things just lying around.
Yeah.
So maybe we can get something going, Sean.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
we can get people to contact me, and I'll be more than happy to get the pictures to them. Maybe we could have a Birney Ball reunion.
Interesting if they got them going again. If probably a lot of the parents that now might have been students when you were doing that, so it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Well, like I said, I've been retired 20 years, so the people who were in the last ball were, let's say, 11 or 12 years old.
Yeah.
So,
they're in their early 30s.
30s now, and just as a comparison, I started teaching school, not at Birney, but my first year that I taught school was 1966 to 67. So I was 10 years older than my students because I taught 5th grade then as well. I was 10 years older than my students because I was 20 when I started teaching. So I don't want to say how old I am now.
You just gave us some math.
But those kids were only 10 years younger than me. So they have grandchildren, maybe great-grandchildren. That was in my first class. So
well, when we initially started talking about doing this show, we both immediately said Krewe of Birney. And when we started to announce it publicly that we were doing this show, I had several Birney alumni, including my sister, but friends that we still talk with from those days that were like, you better be doing one about Krewe of Birney. It impacted a lot of people's lives to get an opportunity to be in a ball at such a young age.
Well, I'll tell you, it's really a great compliment to me to have so many people still interested in the Alice Birney Ball. And it just really, it's always had a special place in my heart and always will. And, to know that there are people who still remember it and who learned something from it and got something out of it, it makes it really special for me.
And you mentioned in the beginning that we had a very special version of If Ever I Cease to Love. To this day, when I hear If Ever I Cease to Love, while some would consider it a sin that I'm not singing the actual lyrics, I'm always singing the Birney lyrics.
I have to have a refresher of the Birney lyrics. I don't
On
recall
Actually, I
that anymore.
have it in my binder.
Oh, I bet you do.
Yeah, at Birney
Give me a
School on
copy.
Hastings, in a song and a dance in a row. We did our thing for Mardi Gras. We saw the world's greatest show. We hope you enjoyed this evening. We had a good time too. We're swearing on our bended knees. If ever I cease to love, may teachers grow on apple trees. If ever I cease to love, if ever I cease to love, if ever I cease to love, may the moon be turned to green cream cheese. If ever I cease to love.
Wait a minute. Okay, so a lot of those I thought were the real lyrics.
Well, some of them are.
Yeah, a lot of it is,
Some of
but
some
there
of
was,
it is. The green cream cheese and the other one is the original
well,
lyrics.
the original one is may peaches grow on apple trees, and obviously in the beginning part where it was edited to refer to Alice Birney. I think on the original one it's it talks about walking down a road,
in a street, in a lane, in a road.
Yes.
Yeah, I know that the words.
Yeah.
My favorite Mardi Gras song ever. But I had the original. I was looking for that song, and I couldn't find it. Now this is in the '80s. I couldn't find it, and I mentioned to somebody that I was looking for If Ever I Cease to Love. And they brought me a 45 of If Ever I Cease to Love, and I made a copy of it. And I think it was Johnny Wiggs, and maybe even Edmund Souchon was on that record. That's how old this was. And I like that gravelly voice sound of it. I've heard it done by other people, but I don't like it as much as that version of it. And that's the version we always played in the background to keep the kids in tune. And I used the words that were from that song because in those days you couldn't find anything. There was nothing online or anything like that.
Right.
And since then I've found some other versions of it, but I still go back to that old version. That's still my favorite.
Yeah, I think the version that I have is Louis Armstrong doing it.
That's why I need to find that tape. I know I have it. I did not get rid of that tape. I have it somewhere. I have a lot of things somewhere in my house.
Well, so since you retired from Birney, I know there's no way that you got out of Mardi Gras. Do you still participate?
Yes. I am now in the Krewe of Iris.
Okay.
And since my first ride in the Krewe of Iris was 2001.
Oh, so immediately after you were ready to go.
I love Mardi Gras.
Yeah.
And then in 2006, I became a line lieutenant.
Okay.
So I've been in Iris actually for 20 years. This was my 20th year in Iris.
Did they rope you into doing their ball yet?
No.
Should we mention to them that you have experience?
Look, let's just keep things like they are. I'm happy just doing what I'm doing because just a shout out to the Krewe of Iris, which I love. We have grown in leaps and bounds over the last couple of years. And when I took over as a line lieutenant, I had 45 people on my float, and now I have 108. So I don't need any other jobs.
Iris has grown a lot lately.
Yeah, I thought I'd heard a stat that aren't y'all the largest membership now?
Yes. We're the oldest women's group that's still parading. We started in 1917. And we didn't start parading, though, till I think it was 1957 was our first parade. And then this past year, we had made some big changes. This past year was our first year to have our floats done by Blaine Kern. And we will now own our own floats and have our own den. and we had over 3,500 members.
Wow.
So we were the oldest crew and the largest crew of Mardi Gras this past year. There was no one, not Bacchus, not Endymion, nobody that was bigger
Iris.
than Iris.
It obviously grew pretty quickly over the last few years, and not to dive too deep into Iris, but yeah, it was surprising to see it get so big so quickly.
Yeah, well, we have a forward-looking captain.
Yeah, that's good. Like that you have your own floats now. A parade becomes its own when it can decorate its own floats, when it has established itself to the point where it can buy its own, and you can run whatever theme you want, and you're not limited to anything.
Exactly. And the best part is not having other crews use your floats. Because usually they would leave our floats a mess. So there'd be a little cleaning up and a little maintenance to do before we rode. So it's just really nice to know that we're going to have our own den and our own floats, and no one else is going to use them.
So,
and I plan on riding in Iris until I can no longer walk.
Well, you'll have to walk to ride.
Well,
but you gotta get on the float.
You gotta get on the float. You gotta get on the float, and you have to be able to get on and off the float under your own power to ride. So, who knows? If I can ride till I'm 100, I'll do it.
Well, I'm glad you're still in. I think, it just feels right to me that you're still part of Mardi Gras. You obviously had a clear effect on us. I've always heard that all the teachers I've ever known, if I can influence one life, then I'm a success. Well, I could personally say that you affected mine, affected them. I'm sure you have hundreds of others. Great success in your wonderful teachers. Good to see you again.
Well, I hope I've done a good job.
You did a phenomenal job.
Thank you.
Phenomenal job.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for coming today. As always, signing out. We'll see you out on the route. Happy Mardi Gras! Thank you again for tuning in to us tonight. Also, thank you to tonight's guests. And also, you can follow us if you like what you're seeing.
It's on Facebook at Parade Route Tales.
And also, we're on Instagram at Parade Route Tales. And on Twitter, it's at Parade Route Tail. If you're not subscribed already, subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/The Scoop Show Network. We're trying to put as much content out there. We've been putting pictures and sharing different events.
Videos, little clip hits of what's coming up, future soon events of our guests. So, keep an eye out.
Yeah, so, thank you for tuning in. Signing out. We'll see you on the route.
Happy Mardi Gras. All right.